Sadashiva-samarambham Shankaracharya-madhyamam Asmadacharya-paryantam Vande Guru-paramparam. Om. Param varishtam brahmishtam paramanandarupinam paramarthanandayatim Sadgurum pranatosmyaham. Vasudevendra yogindram natva jnanapradam gurum mumukshunam hitarthaya tattvabodho vidhiyate. So, we have completed the first 4 topics here. That's the sadhana chatushtayam, the vyashti vicharaha, which is understanding the individual, creation, samashti vicharaha, jiva ishvara aikyam, and jnana phalam. So let's continue today. Suvarna Bhagini, you can chant after me. Nanu jivan muktah kaha.
Nanu jivan muktah kaha.
Yatha dehoyam purushoham brahmanoham shudroham asmiti.
Yatha dehoham purushoham brahmanoham shudroham asmiti.
Dridha nishchayastatha naham brahmano na shudro na purushak kintva sangaha.
Dridha nishchayastatha naham brahmano na shudro na purushak kintvat sangaha.
Satchidananda swarupa prakasha rupa sarvantaryami.
Satchidananda swarupa prakasha rupa sarvantaryami.
Chidakasha ruposmiti.
Chidakasha ruposmiti.
Dridha nishchaya rupa paroksha jnanavan jivan muktaha.
Dridha nishchaya rupa paroksha jnanavan jivan muktaha.
Brahmaivahamasmitya paroksha jnanena nikila karma bandha vinirmukta syat.
Brahmaivamasmitya paroksha jnanena nikhila karma bandha vinirmukta syat.
Now, the author has entered into the final topic of the benefit of the knowledge. Right? So, he's come to the final topic. Jivatma Paramatma Aikya Jnanam or Aham Brahmasmiti Jnanam. The benefit is presented in twofold forms of the Shastra. First is Jivan Muktihi, liberation even while the person is living in the world, the wise person. So Jivan means living wise person, Muktihi means liberation. So that this we saw in the last class, it is a sense of fulfillment born out of the knowledge of the higher self, that I am not the individual living being, which is only temporarily or superficial costume, right, that I'm wearing, through which I have this individualistic experience, but always remembering that behind this individual personality, I am the Atma, which is not confined to the body, which is the self of every living being. Now, not only every living being, which is the truth of the entire creation itself, that knowledge, right? Basically, I am the same Atma in every living being, plus the truth of the entire creation itself. That is, I am the truth of the universe, that knowledge, and not limited by time, space. This knowledge itself, and assimilation of this knowledge gives such a fulfillment that thereafter the ups and downs that the relative individual goes through, right, will not create any deeper and serious scar, right? Swamiji actually gives an example to understand this Jivan Mukti, and it's very interesting, right? And if you relate to it, it's really good. Imagine that India is, say, playing a 5-match series, that too with, say, Pakistan, right? So imagine that it is going to be a best of 5. and India wins the first 3 matches straight away, right? That's the assumption, right? So maybe a rare one, but assume that we win the first 3 matches. So the very purpose of the series is fulfilled. We have won the trophy also. We have taken all the pictures, all the newspapers have splashed this, and all of that is happening. And we know that when we are going to get back to India, people are going to welcome us, all of that, right? So imagine that feeling of that cricket team, right? Then you play the 4th match of the series and the 5th match of the series, right? So imagine the 4th match, right? Now I know that in spite of the result of the 4th match, we have accomplished the mission, and then the cricket team, right, plays the 4th match, right? They certainly don't play to get defeated, definitely not, right? But they do want to win the 4th and the 5th, but they've already won the series. So the inner fulfillment is already there, and with that they play the 4th match. Of course, if we get defeated, there will be sadness, but the feeling in the mind when you play with that fulfillment that you have anyway taken the trophy, that is being compared. He always gives this as an example, right? So he says, similarly, when a spiritual seeker knows the importance of winning the spiritual goal of life, right? Many do not know the importance of the spiritual fulfillment. For them, moksha itself is non-relevant, right? So they don't know the values at all. So imagine a spiritual seeker who considers the primary goal of life is spiritual fulfillment after long effort, right? Perhaps dedicating entire life. And he's got this fulfillment, right? By this discovery, and it is unimaginable and indescribable. It is a fulfillment of the mission of life and the discovery, right? That he is spiritually fulfilled. That Poornatvam is very different. Thereafter, as an individual, that jnani, he does pursue so many worldly things. But depending upon the designation or the title he has got, it could be a father, a mother, or it could be a chairman of an association, or it could be a chief executive of a company, whatever it is, right? He has his own duties. He may plan to do many things, and he may succeed in several things. And in many missions, he may fail also. But that individual success and failure does not cause any deep change to the inner fulfillment, which is continuing throughout life, in and through all the ups and downs of the individual. So that fulfillment is called Jivan Mukti, and the description of the state of mind, right, of a Jivan Mukti alone, right, is described in several textbooks, right? Very interesting. The 2nd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, from verse 54 to 72, the Sthita Prajna portion discusses this. The 12th chapter, verse 13 to 20, discusses this. 14th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna himself describes, right? From 22 to 27 of the 14th chapter, this is described. All these are descriptions. In fact, Krishna uses various terms. He uses Sthira Prajna in one place. Then he refers to the that condition as Dhammi Sthiti. Then he also says Brahmanishtaha. He uses different words, right, to indicate the same Jivan Mukta, right, the Jnani. So all these are descriptions of the mental state of a person who has accomplished the fundamental spiritual mission of life. So this is benefit number 1, right? Now, what will happen to Jivan Mukti Jnani when the life comes to an end? Jnani will shed the body, right? So, Brahmaiva iti aham asmi iti aparoksha jnanena. Because of the direct knowledge of aham brahmasmi of a jnani, maranakale, right? When such a jnani drops the body at the time of death, vinirmuktaha, muktaha syat, he will be totally free from all the shackles of karma. So here the author introduces the word karma and karma bandha, meaning shackles of karma. Nikhila means all the shackles, vinirmuktaha syat. He gets totally freed from all the shackles. And according to scriptures, karma alone is responsible for the cycle of birth and death. So, right, in the case of every living being, there is punarapi jananam and punarapi maranam, whose beginning we can't trace and whose end we can't talk about as long as the karma continues. So, in the case of jnani, the karma account becomes 0 or nil. Please be with me till the end of the class, or even maybe next class if it's required. Just take this sentence and keep it aside. In the case of the jnani, the karma account becomes 0 or nil. And since karma is the cause of punarjanma, they give example of, oil keeping the flame going, right? The flame continues how long? As long as the oil doesn't dry up, the flame continues. But afterwards, the flame is put out. So the individuality of the flame is gone, but the fire itself is not destroyed. The shaped flame merges into Agni Tattvam, the formless energy, right? So it is also like the iceberg melting in the sunlight and merging into water. So the individuality is lost. Similarly, the individual Jivatma is like a flame, like an iceberg. Because of the jnana, the individuality of the jnani is totally lost and it merges into the Paramatma, the total consciousness. And thereafter, there is no question of Punarapi Jananam and Maranam cycle. Because the oil in the form of karma is totally gone, right? So we will now be curious to know what is this karma. And the author talks about the karma from the standpoint of a jnani, right? In this textbook, in Tattvabodha textbook, the author is talking about karma from the standpoint of a jnani, right? So now this particular statement we will revisit after we discuss a little bit about the laws of karma from a ajnani standpoint. That is what we are first interested in, right? Unless you have attended Introduction to Vedanta and have gone through this session, this will be new to you, the law of karma session, right? So let us do the law of karma, apply it to an ajnani, and then we'll come back and revisit this particular statement so that we understand better. So now we are supposed to know what is the role of karma in the case of an ordinary person who is not a jnani. So karma from jnani's angle is discussed in Tattvabodha. Karma from ajnani's angle, Tattvabodha doesn't discuss, right? It assumes that we know. Understanding the law of karma is extremely useful, not only for spiritual knowledge, very important. It is extremely useful for confronting difficult situations of life also. In fact, this is one of the early impacts you start feeling as you embark on the spiritual journey. Okay, understanding this concept. So the understanding and assimilation of law of karma gives the mind such a power that the very knowledge of law of karma gives us the emotional strength that we will be able to withstand unknown and unpredictable future as it unfolds, right? Many of them are wonderful, unexpected and pleasant surprises, but some of them are shocking experiences as well. So to face such a situation, even without self-knowledge, right? The very knowledge and assimilation of the law of karma is useful. So what is the law of karma? We'll study that, right? The main principle is that all our noble karma meaning actions, which are one in the form of contribution to others, right, out of our goodwill or without any ulterior motive, all good actions, all noble actions, which are in the form of contribution to other individuals or society and which are done out of pure goodwill without any ulterior motive, it produces a positive invisible result. Because of our invisible goodwill and noble motive, the goodwill will be invisible. So noble motive is invisible. So it produces an invisible result which is called adrishta phalam. So adrishtam means not visible to the eye. And since these actions are noble, done with noble motive and no ulterior motive, right? So you may not get thanks, you may not get money from others, nothing, not even an acknowledgement from others. So Shastra says it produces an invisible positive result. So that result, that positive result is called punyam. And if these good actions produce positive result, we have to imagine the opposite also. When evil, wrong actions are done with pure motive to hurt and harm others, right? These actions will also produce adrishta phalam, which is negative adrishta phalam, because motive is cruel, sadistic, negative, hurtful, right? And all those actions, physical, verbal, or even mental, all those kaikam, vachikam, manasa karmani will produce a negative invisible result. That is also adrishtam. So the negative result is called papam. And in our scriptures, there's a huge list of do's and don'ts. Vidhi and Nisheda are endlessly mentioned. So in the Bhagavad Gita, also one exclusive chapter is dedicated for that purpose. Daivi Sampat and Asuri Sampat. Daiva Asura Sampat Vibhaga Yogaha. So chapter 16 talks about a full list. Okay. Even 13 talks about it. So a lifestyle which makes me a divine human being. A lifestyle which makes me a demonic human being. And by doing such action and by living such a way of life, so I am either accumulating punyam or papam continuously. And if we learn the Shastra, we can understand what will generate punyam. And by leading such a life, we can accumulate punyam. So many points, exactly like carbon credits, etc. Right? So we can get punyam points and papam points also. And we have not studied scriptures, because of which we don't know what is vidhi and what is nisheda. Nisheda means what should not be done, and vidhi is what should be done. Right? So, like in medical sciences, they say this is good for health, that is bad for health, right? So the nutrients, etc. If we don't study, we don't know. So based on these guidelines, on the dharmic guidelines that the Shastra talks about, the plus and minus points in the form of punyam and papam, we accumulate right through our life. So if we can study the scriptures and know the details of the general guidelines, then we know how to accumulate punya karma and most of the papa karma also. There are some gray areas also, but Shastra gives a general rule to know what produces punyam, what produces papam. In a very nice shloka, shlokartena pravakshyami yaduktam grantha koti bihi. With regard to punyam and papam, whatever has been said in dozens and hundreds of scriptures, I shall tell you in half a verse, right? I shall tell you in half a verse what is punyam generator and what is papam generator. So the second half of the line of the shloka goes, paropakara punyaya papaya parapidanam. Very simple rule. Whatever you do for helping others, all such reaching out actions done individually or collectively, they are called para upakara karmani. And all paropakara karmani done without any ulterior motives, purely out of God, right? They add up to our punyam bank balance. So every day I will add more and more. And then papaya parapidanam, all the actions that are done to harm others, physical, verbal, mental, all these, what happens? It gives ahimsa, right? So to others. So that is papam. It will add to papam. Ahimso paramo dharmaha, himsa paramo adharmaha. So very simple rule, right? Ahimsa produces punyam, himsa produces papam. Ahimsa means not harming others and helping others, right? That is why in Hinduism, in daily puja, at the end, we have got a few verses so that we can remember and generate this punyam, right? Very common ones. Let's quickly see. Sarve Bhavantu Sukinah, Sarve Santu Niramayah, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. This is a very famous one that most of us repeat without understanding why and what behind it, right? We are not spending any money. It is just doing social service. And even in this one moment's total focused prayer, let everyone be happy. Let there not be suffering in the world. Even the simple thought will add to punyam, right? Very important. And similarly, I don't know whether any of you are listening to Swamiji's meditation classes, where at the end of the class, he chants this. Durjana sajjano bhuyat, sajjana shanti mapnuyat, shanto muccheta bandebhyah, muktaschanyan vimochayet. Let all the criminal-minded people transform in their mind. Let their thoughts become positive. I cannot go to some of those places where terrorism is very bad, right? I cannot go there. Here itself you pray, let their mind turn good, right? You don't pray that they should die. let their mind turn good, right? Durjana sajjano bhuyat, sajjana shanti mapnuyat. All the noble people, let them not face trouble from, bad people. Shanto mritcheta bandebhya. All the noble people, may they get an opportunity to get spiritual knowledge. And through the spiritual knowledge, let them all get moksha, right? So we have such beautiful prayers, right? And we everywhere, if you see, we never say few people, me, my life. No, all of these, if you see, there will be Sarve. Sarve means what? All, the whole world, right? So the religious restrictions, there is no, if you see, there is no religious restriction, no racial restriction, no caste, creed, right? We don't say, let just the Brahmins be happy or Hindus be happy. We are okay with everybody and we pray for everybody. And it's an innocent and pure-minded prayer. Let everyone be happy. So, paropakara, by doing that, increases punyam, and parapidanam increases papam, right? And both punya papam we accumulate in this birth. So this is the first aspect, or you can call it law number 1. And the next law is all the punyam accumulated by me will be later converted into favorable situations. And all papams in my name will be later converted into unfavorable situations. Therefore, every favorable and unfavorable situation which I face without working for it, note the word without working for it, that is destiny. So our own accumulated punyam and papam will regularly come in the form of favorable and unfavorable situations. It can be physical, it can be mental, it can be a family circumstance, it can be an environmental condition, because it is all the fructifying punyam and papam, right? So the second law is what? The punyam gives sukham and the papam will give dukkham. Punyam gives happiness and papam will give unhappiness. This is the second aspect. The third one is punyam will get transformed into sukham, right? Not directly. By creating favorable conditions. Punyam cannot directly give pleasure and pain. Through our conditions, even through our relationships. If one relationship gives happy condition, that is because my own punyam works through that right relationship. My own papam works through the bad relationships also. So through family conditions, etc., the punya papa gets transformed, right? So we don't know, because different punyam fructify at different times. Because punyam and papam are adrishtam, we have no way of knowing when they will fructify, like exactly like different plants which give fruits, right? We don't know at what time they will give us fruits, right? So there is a papaya, it will become a plant and give me within 6 months. Whereas there's a coconut tree which takes long time, mango tree takes longer, right? So I plant it, but I'm not sometimes there even to get the fruits, right? So the gestation period is so long. So the incubation period of the punyam and papam is variable. Therefore, some punyam and papam will fructify in this janma itself. Janma means in this current birth, and some of the punya papam may not fructify in the current birth. And some of the punya papam may go even further, right? It may fructify in the next birth, or it may be even next birth, right? So some of them will fructify. And also, some of the ones that we acquire in the current janma may fructify now or may not fructify at all, right? So this is the next law, because we cannot determine the time frame of these punyam and papam. Then there is a fourth aspect. We can acquire punya papam only in the human birth, because human beings alone have the discretionary power, the free will, the mind, the buddhi, to understand what is good or bad. So they deliberately do good action and deliberately they can avoid bad action. So this kind of free will and discrimination is there only for human beings. Therefore, in the human birth alone, we can acquire punyam and papam. The exhaustion of punya papam takes place in the human birth, right? Acquisition also takes place in the human birth. Whereas in the case of animals, like say the buffalo or the cow, There can't be any acquisition. Take, for example, a buffalo or a cow, right? Which decides to just cross the road when the signals are red. The police can't book the buffalo or the cow. The police will book the man who's driving the buffalo or the cow, right? So the poor cow doesn't know what is the law. It is governed by its instincts. If it sees grass on the other side, it will just cross, right? It doesn't bother whether it is right or wrong, right? And it doesn't have animal kingdom itself. They don't do any premeditated, meditated murder, right? They never do anything that is preconceived or premeditated or planned, right? So it is not planned and executed. So in the forest, there will always be a balance because they only kill for hunger, right? The violation happens only when the human being enters the forest and starts, poaching elephants, etc. We have the intelligence and the free will and the resources to know what is harmonious living and what is violation. Therefore, we alone will get punyam and papam. Animals exhaust their karma, but they don't acquire karma. So animals don't acquire karma, we must remember, right? So they exhaust the punya papam, which is acquired in not the previous animal janmas. They have acquired the punya papam in previous human janmas, right? So we have to remember that the past human janmas, whatever akramam or papam that we have done, that is what results in the animal birth. So animals also have had a human janma in the past, we have to note. And therefore, the warning is, we also have to be careful. If we lead such a life, violating all the dharma and sadistically enjoying this, giving pain to others, then Bhagavan decides such a person deserves an animal janma, and therefore humans can become animals, and animals can also become humans later. Therefore, one important thing is, we don't believe in the evolution theory of Darwin, saying that they'll be only uniformly going up in their lives. No, it's not like that. It's not that unicellular will only become a human being ultimately. No. According to Hindu law of karma, not uniform growth, but there can be a zigzag motion. Human beings can become animals, can become devatas also. Human beings alone acquire punyam and papam. So that is the law. The next law, what is it? Another aspect. In a particular life, whatever we are experiencing, if we are human beings, whatever we are experiencing will be the result of notional, basically the punya papam of the current janma plus the past janma. Very important, right? And our experience are the result of the consolidated, basically whatever we are doing, continue to do in this janma, plus something that has come from the previous janmas. A fraction of it only gets exhausted in each janma. You must remember that. Okay, in this context, Shastra gives 3 special names, right? Let us see what these names are and what they mean. So, Sanchita karma means accumulated karma, means all the punya papams acquired by any living being in all the past human janmas. So, all the punya papams acquired in countless past janmas. There is no beginning, I said, right? So, past human janmas acquired, and it is there in our current karma account, right? So, I do not even know, right? So, it is samyak chitam sanchitam. Sanchitam, even though it is the result of the action, it is actually sanchita karma or sanchita karma phalam, and it is shortened and named sanchita. So, we should understand sanchita karma is phalam in the form of good and bad. And all these sanchita karmani do not fructify at the same time, just as different trees fructify at different times. So, punya papam fructify at different times in a particular, in an order determined by the law of karma, exactly like the maturity of a bank account or a fixed deposit, etc. Okay. The next one is prarabdha karma. Whatever is ready for the current birth is called prarabdham. Prakarshena, very powerfully, effectively maintaining the universal laws of karma, whatever fructifies, the fructifying branches, prarabdham in the current janma. Okay. Prarabdham alone will affect the current Janma. We must remember that. So Sanchita will not touch us. Even the worst papam of the Sanchitam cannot touch me in the current Janma. Right? Similarly, the best punyam of the Sanchitam also cannot touch me. Only Prarabdham influences the current Janma of the human beings, current Janma of even the animals. Okay? So that is why if you see, there is a street dog. Suddenly somebody decides to adopt that and then they take care of it so well. Suddenly it happens, right? So one day it is on the streets, the next day, it's on the lap of, say, a celebrity, right? So the dog starts enjoying, etc., right? So it is very important to note that even animals have this prarabdha, all living beings. So the prarabdha is basically the portion of the karma which is applicable for the current janma, right? So it is a portion of the total karma. Now what I have earned comes back to me, so it is called prarabdha karma. Unless somebody helps, animals do not do or cannot do anything to their prarabdha. Very important. In the case of human beings, we do have an advantage. What is that? We can do fresh karma and generate punyam and papam. And which punyam and papam will fructify either in the current janma or later. So whatever we are doing in the current janma is called agami, which only human beings can generate. Animals cannot. Animals have only prarabdha karma. They cannot generate agami because they are animals. They don't have a free will, right? So only the human beings can do good actions and bad actions and can generate agami karma, right? And how does it help? Because we can create this agami karma, we can neutralize the fructifying prarabdham, right? So imagine that you kind of, there is a meteorite or something, right, coming. You know it's going to hit us, but because, scientists have found a way and they're discussing how can we deflect it from the earth such that it goes and hits somewhere else, right? Similarly, the prarabdha karma is bound to happen, right? And you can have agami karma, which can counteract this prarabdha karma, right? A few things that you should know here is, basically, I can either do a general agami karma, which is to neutralize any prarabdha karma, or I can do a particular agami karma, which is alone in Shastra called parihara karmani or prayaschitta karmani. It's a special agami, right? So normally the prarabdham cannot be known. Now this is where everything connects. Because it is called adrishtam, Shastra itself has given us certain methods. And what is that method? It is the horoscope. The positions of the planets indicate the prarabdha karma of the person, right? So when they say planets are affecting us, the Saturn is affecting us, right? They say the Ashtama, Shani and all of that, right? So the good astrologer can actually identify the bad prarabdha. He can also suggest prayaschitta karmani, which are optionally given, and we can do it. Vedanta never advises going to the astrologers and doing prayaschitta karmani. As part of the academic discussion, it's important to know that agami karmani are things that you can do to influence the prarabdha. You can also do good and bad actions, good actions especially to accumulate punya in this janma, right? Now, whether the prarabdham will get neutralized by this agami or not, we don't know, right? It's the universal law of karma which is operating. So there are some prarabdha karmas which are curable, there are some which are manageable, and some which are incurable. So prabala, durbala, and madhyama prarabdham are there. So thus, samchita, prarabdha, and agami are the three different categories. And when the current prarabdha gets exhausted, whatever agami has to fructify in this janma, they are also exhausted. So during the life of a person, prarabdha has to be completely exhausted, and the agami portion of whatever needs to be exhausted gets exhausted. The rest of them, there is a carry forward balance left at the time of death. It will go and join the sanchita karma. So prarabdha is completely exhausted. Part of the agami, we don't know how much part, gets, whatever is the leftover portion gets carried forward and gets attached to the sanchita karma, papa and punya, which is already there. And Then from this Sanchita, a new bunch called the Prarabdha of the next Janma emanates, and thus the Punarapi Jananam, Punarapi Maranam cycle goes on and on and on, nourished by Punya Papa Karmani. Now, let's quickly see what happens at the time of the death of an Ajnani. This is how the process works. So at the time of death, the Prarabdha is exhausted. In fact, it is on exhaustion of the Prarabdha that death occurs, right? When does the prana leave the body? When the Prarabdha is exhausted. You must remember that the second the Prarabdha is exhausted, wherever you are, it doesn't matter. You can try anything. Somehow, death will happen at that stage, right? Then at the time of death, a part of Agami is also experienced and exhausted, but the remaining part of Agami is still unexperienced. This unexperienced part of Agami will join the Sanchita Karma. When Prarabdha is exhausted, the Stula Shariram or the physical body falls off, but only the Stula Shariram goes away. The Sukshma Shariram and Karana Shariram continues even after death. So the reflected consciousness, which we saw, that also continues after death. Only the Stula Shariram and its reflection go away. Okay, that is RM1 goes away, but the other RMs, the RCs, they all continue. And of course, the original consciousness, which is eternally existing, is also continuing. So the Jiva basically consists of the original consciousness, the Sukshma and Karana Sharira media, and the respective reflected consciousness. That is what survives. But we cannot see the Sukshma and Karana Sharirams and the reflections in them. Thus, this invisible Jiva nucleus continues and travels to acquire another physical body depending upon the next fructifying Prarabdha. Right? So we must remember this, and thus the Punarapi Jananam, Punarapi Maranam cycle goes on. Now, coming back to this sentence here, Brahma eva aham asmi iti aparoksha jnanena nikhila karma bandha vinirmuktaha syat. Right? So the author is now discussing the final topic of Jnana Phala, the benefit of self-knowledge, which is presented as Jivan Mukti and Videha Mukti. Right? Now what we saw was what happens in the case of Ajnani, who is going to get rebirth. Right? So here the topic started with Jivan Mukti and Videha Mukti, and we completed the discussion on Jivan Mukti. And a Jnani continues to live in the world like other people. And because of the power of Jnanam, he gets immunity from the other problems of samsara, just as a lotus leaf remaining in water doesn't get wet by the water. So similarly, Jnani also remains unaffected by the ups and downs of life. So generally defined as samatvam or equanimity of the mind. So after going through this Jivan Mukti for a length of time, the Jnani's body also falls at the appropriate time. So when the time of death comes after death, what happens to a Jnani is mentioned as Videha Mukti. And Videha Mukti is a Shastric word indicating freedom from the cycle of birth and death. For all other people who are not Jnanis, we saw Punarapi Jananam, Punarapi Maranam will continue. For Jnani, the death of body is considered the final death. There is no question of Punarapi Jananam, Punarapi Maranam. The author wants to give the reason, right? So he says here, basically, Sanchita, Prarabdha and Agami Karma are there. So Sanchita is accumulated karma. Prarabdha is functioning in this current life, right? So while exhausting the Prarabdha, whatever we acquire afresh is called Agami Karma. Now in the case of the Jnani, what happens, right? So in the case of Jnani, all the three karmas are there. But the definition of Sanchitam and Agami slightly vary. Prarabdha definition is the same, right? But the definition of Sanchita and Agami will be slightly different in the case of Jnani. So we have to see how it differs and then what happens, right? That is what we have to see in the case of Jnani. So let us see that, and I'll give you enough time for Q&A today as well as after the summary class next week, hopefully. Okay. So, Bhagini, you can chant after me. Karmani kati vidhani santiti chet.
कर्माणि कति विधानि सन्तीति चेत्
Agami sanchita prarabdha bhedena.
आगामि सञ्चित प्रारब्ध भेदेन
Trividhani santi.
त्रिविधानि सन्ति
Agami karma kim.
आगामि कर्म किम्
Jnanotpatyanantaram jnanideha kritam.
ज्ञानोत्पत्त्यनन्तरं ज्ञानिदेहकृतम्
Punya-papa-rupam karma-yadasti tadagami-thyabhidhiyate.
पुण्यपापरूपं कर्म यदस्ति तदागामीत्यभिधीयते
Sanchitam karma kim.
सञ्चितं कर्म किम्
Ananta-koti-janmanam bija-bhutam sat-yat-karma-jatam.
अनन्तकोटिजन्मनां बीजभूतं सत् यत्कर्म जातम्
Purvarjitam tishtati tat-sanchitam nyeyam.
पूर्वार्जितं तिष्ठति तत्सञ्चितं ज्ञेयम्
Prarabdham karma kimiti chet.
प्रारब्धं कर्म किमिति चेत्
Idam shariram-utpadya iha-loka eva sukha-dukkadi-pradam yat-karma tat-prarabdham.
इदं शरीरमुत्पाद्य इह लोक एव सुखदुःखादिप्रदं यत्कर्म तत्प्रारब्धम्
Bhogena nashtam bhavati.
भोगेन नष्टं भवति
Prarabdha-karmanam bhogadeva kshaya iti.
प्रारब्धकर्मणां भोगादेव क्षय इति
So, a student is raising a question. Karmani kati vidani santi. We've already seen this, so we're going to go through fast. But remember that these definitions pertain to a jnani, not to an ajnani. So whatever I did so far, please keep that in the background. Now we are seeing the jnani's case. Okay. So throughout the discussion, karma should be taken as karma phalam, which is punyam or papam. So how many types are there? Trividhani santi. 3 types. Agami sanchita prarabdha karma. Right? They are the 3 Vedas. Right? So now prarabdha means that bunch of karmani which has started fructification right from the time of birth. The type of body, the womb, right? What problems we have, all that, right? At birth, that is determined by prarabdha, where we are born, etc. Right? So that is the prarabdha. So now each of them, now sanchitam is also going to be defined here. Sanchitam is that of a jnani, which is slightly different from that of sanchitam of an ajnani, which we'll see. Now first is agami karma kim, right? What is agami karma in the case of the jnani? What does it say? The crucial difference here is jnana utpatti anantaram, after the rise of knowledge, right? Whatever is there for a jnani, the rise of knowledge, after the rise of knowledge is only for a jnani, right? Whatever he does, right? That is agami. For the case of ajnani, agami is anything that he does willfully from birth, entire life, willfully. Obviously, the first few years in childhood, nothing is willful, right? So all of that is agami in the case of ajnani. Whereas in the case of jnani, it is only from the point at which he acquired knowledge, right? So here the author carefully uses the expression. He doesn't say karma done by jnani, because karma is done by a body of a jnani. Because jnani knows he is thula sukshma karana sharirat vyatiriktaha, right? Therefore, he says jnani deha kritam. The body of the jnani, whatever it does, right? So that is what he's taking, right? All types of action, whether it is good or bad, after the jnanam, right? That is going to be, that is agami. What happens to agami is going to be discussed later. Here the definition is given, and abhidhiyate means named. So that is agami karma. So anything that the jnani does Post jnanam is agami karma in simple terms. Okay. The next one is sanchitam karma kim ananta koti janmanam bijabhutam satyat karma jatam purvarjitam tishtati tat sanchitam neyam. Basically, in the case of a jnani, yat karma jatam purvarjitam, whatever punya papam has been acquired in the past means in the past infinite janmas, all of them, countless past janmas, it can be even bigger than, Himalaya, it will be that big, right? Our sanchita, ananta koti janmana. And then, yat karma jatam purvarjitam, accumulated in the past. And for Ajnani, we use the word Janma. It refers to all the past Manushya Janmas, but the current Janma is not taken into account for Ajnani. For Ajnani, whatever karmas have been accumulated in the past Janmas is referred to as Sanchitam. Whereas in the case of Jnani, all of the past Janmas, whatever has been acquired, plus whatever has been done till the point of getting jnanam or self-knowledge, right? So until that point, all of them, suppose at the age of 40, somebody, I'm just giving you a very crude example, gets self-knowledge or it becomes a jnani. All of that plus all the previous janmas, whatever karmas are there, that becomes sanchitam. So there's a slight change in the definition itself, right? So sanchita jneyam is to be understood as sanchita karma, right? So jnani sanchita karma, what will happen? That is also going to be answered now. Prarabdha karma kimiti chet idam shariram uppadya ihaloka evam sukha dukkadi pradam yat karma tat prarabdam bhogena nashtam bhavati prarabdha karmanam bhogad eva kshayah iti. So what is prarabdha karma in the case of a jnani iti chet? If such a question is asked, yat karma, whatever bunch of karma, idam shariram utpadya, which is responsible for the origination of the current body, right? That prarabdha, it's the same for jnani and ajnani. So that prarabdha, which is responsible for this current body and which has to be exhausted in this current body, okay, that will be exhausted. It's the same definition for both jnani and ajnani. Therefore, ihaloke sukha dukkadi pradam. There are some who are healthy and fit even at 90, 100, and some who are aged at 40, 50 and who have problems, right? So it is all determined by the prarabdha karma, right? So then the discussion from Bhogena is, the topic is different here. So tat prarabdam Bhogena nashtam bhavati. So Bhogena onwards, right? What will happen to the three karmas? So this is the prarabdam, then they'll take up agami and then sanchitam. He says, Bhogena nashtam bhavati. As far as prarabdha is concerned, since it has started fructification, since it is already in motion, it will continue. Whether it is a jnani's body or an ajnani's body, the body will have to exhaust the prarabdha karma. So if the prarabdham requires a particular sickness for the body, whether it is a jnani's body or an ajnani's body, the sickness will affect and the person has to go through the prarabdham. So bhogadeva kshayaha. Bhogadeva kshayaha means only by going through the experiences, right? This can be exhausted. So now the question will be, okay, then what is the purpose of jnanam? If you say, anyway, I have to exhaust the prarabdham, whether I am a jnani or an ajnani, what is the purpose then? So for this, the Shastra gives an answer, right? First thing is, even assuming that this is the only benefit, the psychological response will vary because jnanam influences my response. So the events being the same, you see different people responding differently to situations, right? Some are moderately disturbed, some are heavily disturbed, right? Some of them are not prepared at all during a business failing or anything, right? So that is what, if you see the psychological preparedness that we have, the emotional kavacham, like a raincoat, right? Jnanam gives that protection. So the disturbance is limited. So that is FIR reduction and CCC increase. So Lord Krishna tells in Bhagavad Gita, Guruna api dukkhena na vichalyate. A jnani is one who's not shaken for even a colossal tragedy, that withstanding immunity, right? The jnanam gives. So this is how prarabdha is handled by a jnani. So it is like an insurance, right? Psychological insurance against the ups and downs of a life, of the life. What about sanchitam? Sanchitam karma brahmaivahamiti.
Sanchitam karma brahmaivahamiti.
Nishchayatmaka jnanena nashyati.
Nishchayatmaka jnanena nashyati.
Agami karmapi jnanena nashyati.
Agami karmapi jnanena nashyati.
Kincha agami karmanam nalini dalagata jalavat.
Kincha agami karmanan nalini dalagata jalavat.
Jnaninam sambandho nasti.
Jnaninam sambandho nasti.
Kinchaye jnaninam stuvanti.
Kinchaye jnaninam stuvanti.
Bhajantyarchayanti.
Bhajantyarchayanti.
Tan prati jnani kritam agami punyam gacchati.
Tan prati jnani kritamagami punyam gacchati.
Ye jnaninam nindanti.
Ye jnaninam nindanti.
Dvishanti.
Dvishanti.
Dukkha pradhanam kurvanti.
Dukkha pradanam kurvanti.
Tan prati jnani krita sarvamagami kriyamanam.
Tan pratikjnani kritam sarvamagami kriyamanam.
Yadavachyam karma papatmakam tad gacchati.
Yadavachyam karma papatmakam tad gacchati.
Tata chatmavit samsaram.
Tatha chatmavit samsaram.
Tirtva brahmanandamihaiva prapnoti.
Tirtva brahmanandamihaiva prapnoti.
Karati shokam atmaviditi shrutehe.
Tarati shokamatma viditi shrutehe.
Tanum tyajati va kashyam shvapashasya grihe tava.
Tanun tyajatu va kashyam shvapachasya grihe thava.
Jnana samprapti samaye muktosau vigatashayah.
Jnana samprapti samaye muktosau vigatashayah.
Iti smritescha.
Iti smritescha.
So, sanchitam karma. The sanchita karma of Ajnani, which is a huge bundle accumulated in the countless past janmas, including the current janma up to the jnanam, right? It's, what does it say? Jnanena nashyati. So it is burnt or destroyed by the powerful medicine of jnanam. So jnanam is the most powerful medicine, like exactly the antibiotic destroying the bacteria, right? So jnanam destroys the entire bunch of sanchitam. And of course, this we can accept and assimilate and swallow only when we understand and the significance and the depth of the type of knowledge. Otherwise, it will appear to be a casual statement. And it is very difficult to assimilate as we get to know the profundity of the knowledge, right? Slowly. Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya Jivo Brahmaiva Naparaha. The significance of all these components of knowledge, right? More we understand, the statement will become more meaningful. Initially, we wonder how can just a knowledge destroy all the infinite accumulated karma? For the facility of understanding, in tradition, they give some kind of an example which may help in accepting this. As example, which is given as a person in dream. So when a person is in the dream, by the word I, he understands what? His dream body and his dream mind, he takes as himself. And he's got a dream world. So in the dream, he does lot of good and bad actions. So he's worried about being caught and punished, etc. Right? So when such a state is there, imagine that the person wakes up. Now what happens? Here also knowledge takes place. In the waking up knowledge, the meaning of the word I is totally changed. The word I remaining the same. During dream, the word I had one meaning. The moment I wake up, the very word I has a totally different meaning. So there is a transition from one plane of existence to another plane. Imagine that he's about to be imprisoned in dream. And he was pushed by the police and he's chased, right? And he's about to be imprisoned in the dream. And he was pushed to the corner in the jail. And suddenly he fell and his head hit against the wall and he woke up. 7 years he's supposed to be in jail or life imprisonment. He woke up. So how many years of jail will he have? It's a totally different plane. Therefore, that is why we use the word self-knowledge, right? Is an awakening from one plane to the other. Not only the way I look at myself differs, the way I look at the dream world also differs. When I was in dream, I looked at the dream world in a particular way. When I wake up, I look at it in a different way. So there is a revolutionary change in the perception of myself and the perception of the world. So there is an awakening. So there is a transition from one plane to another. When the significance of this awakening and the transition of the plane is understood and assimilated, then alone we can fully swallow the message that Samchita Karma is wiped out. So this example should be used in understanding Jnanam is awakening from one plane to the other. And these three planes are given a technical name, right? Subjective reality to empirical reality to absolute reality. Okay. And we use Pratibhasika Satyam, Vyavaharika Satyam, and Paramarthika Satyam. Right? These are the terms that are used. So Atma is absolute reality. So subjective I to empirical I to absolute I. When I awaken from the subjective I to empirical I, all the karmani of the subjective I is wiped out, right? And when I awaken from empirical I to the absolute I, all the karmas of the empirical plane are wiped out. Thus, we should understand the three planes and discuss Vedanta. Right? Then only we know the significance of this statement. So therefore, keep it pending. As we study more and more, we understand the profundity of the statement and the depth, right? And it becomes very, very clear. If it was that simple to be understood in just, say, one class or one reading, right? There wouldn't be so many acharyas, there wouldn't be so many prakarana granthas, so much of steps involved, and so many years and decades and janmas of study involved, right? So this is the awakening that we have to come to. So Sanchita Karma basically gets destroyed by Jnanam, Jnanena Nashyati. Then what about Agami Karma? Now Jnani has to become free from Agami Karma also. He is free from Prarabdha. He is free from Sanchita. Now we are going to talk about Jnani's freedom from Agami Karma. Because Prarabdha he will anyway exhaust, right? So for that, we have to take a very different example and we have to see. Basically, Agami Karma is, as he doesn't have Kartrutvam and Bhoktrutvam. Simple terms in Gita, right? I am Akarta, Abhokta. He does everything with the thought in his mind always that I am the higher self, the Atma, right? So I think what I'll do is I'll stop here because there is little more that I have to complete, which there's nothing wrong. I'll take it up in the next class along with the summary so that I don't rush through this section. So I'll stop here and I'll take questions. So Agami Karma basically doesn't get accumulated for the Jnani, and it just because he doesn't have any ego, ahankara, there's no Kartrutvam and Bhoktrutvam. For now, for this class, just we'll stop with this. And the next class, I will explain all this and then complete summary also. Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay, I saw a lot of hands also going up. One second. SS, please go ahead. SS. Okay. There are some questions here. If animals don't accumulate karma, punya or papa, how will they attain human janma in the future? I think I've already answered this, because there have been past human janmas, and in the Sanchita karma, there could be papam and punyam corresponding to a subsequent human janma later. So a portion of the Sanchita karma gets fructified as prarabdha karma for every janma. So animals do not have to accumulate punya and papa in this janma, but the old Sanchita karma can result in a human prarabdha karma. For the realized karma, including prarabdha, is not applicable. Hence, the body should fall immediately after realization. No. Prarabdha will continue until the person has exhausted, because it is already set in motion, right? So it has to take its normal course and continue. For this class, this much is enough. I don't want to get into a more profound response to this particular question. So you assume that prarabdha, once started, will continue until it is exhausted. How does the prarabdha karma get decided at the time of birth? How, what time frame, which karma comes first, etc. We are not aware. The Shastras do not speak about the exact methodology, etc. Bhagavan is the administrator and he takes care of the law of karma, but he is not partial. It is all going through a particular programmed law in terms of which Sanchita comes forward, prarabdha comes forward, etc., except that we are not aware. It is also a fact that realization is also decided in advance by the prarabdha. No, not necessarily. You can make your effort, and through agami karma, you can definitely arrive at, you can influence your spiritual journey. Pratibhasika, what are the other two terms? Vyavaharika satyam and paramarthika satyam. Paramarthika being absolute reality. Guruji, how does an ajnani experience part of this agami karma? Yeah, the agami karma, basically the same law as prarabdha karma. So a portion of the agami karma, either you may be doing prayachitta karma to address the old prarabdha karma, which is fructifying, or you could be doing some good deeds and the result may be immediate, because we don't know the time frame. It can happen within this janma itself. Prabala, Durbala and Madhyama, that's the third term. How to explain the population increase in terms of human incarnation? Very simple. Because it is anadi, and I said it can be akrama. It is not like Darwin's theory has said. So we could go backwards, we could go forward, depending on the papam or punyam that we have done, right? So there need not be a population. The population increase may be of the human species. Some other species may be going down. So the balance is maintained at the universal law level. How are the scientists who have contributed so many amazing inventions to the mankind and world considered? Will it become their punyam? Yes, all depends on the motive. A surgeon who is cutting open the body, he's doing it with a positive, good motive, right? Unless he's cheating somebody, right? No, you don't expect that out of a surgeon. Then in which case it is punyam only. Is it okay to chant Om as per scriptures? Because I heard it is only for sannyasis and householders are not qualified to chant pranava. Yeah, in general, the Veda Purva Bhaga gives Gayatri mantra for the householders. Women can also chant Smarta Gayatri, but Om is used only by sannyasis. And there is a particular ritual where they fold up everything into Om. That is the reason. what is the view of Advaita Vedanta on astrological remedies to influence the prarabdha karma? Vedanta is beyond all this. Veda Purva Bhaga accepts that you can do parihara karma or prayachita karma to address prarabdha. It is perfectly okay. There's no problem. In Vedanta, you're supposed to go beyond all this, right? And that is why we don't talk about it. Are things in life predestined, or we invite situations based on our will? Prarabdha as well as Agami both will operate. So you have every right to influence, right? So Karmanyavadikaraste in Gita tells you exactly that. You do your best, right? And you can influence the prarabdha as well. And you can influence, you can determine what needs to happen, etc. But remembering that there are some other factors at play that gives you that emotional strength. Krishna Prasad ji, go ahead.
Namaste, Bhagini.
Namaste.
So, going back to the paropakaram, punyam, parapidanam, papam, and then in the context of ahimsa, I just think that, like even in Mahabharata, parapidanam was used to basically to support paropakaram, correct? So they were all warriors. And even in our context, our country lost a major chunk of Kashmir and Ladakh because of ahimsa incorrectly followed. We should have.
Correct.
So I think we have to put that in the right context. I think.
Absolutely. Duties we have not discussed today because that's a subject which is discussed elaborately in the Bhagavad Gita. So that's why I took the example of a surgeon. So similarly, an army man who is, in the battlefront, who is killing, that is his duty. And that doesn't, attract Agami Papa at all, right? So ahimsa in the right context, yes, absolutely.
Okay, the second question is, I know you said, answered to one of the questions about time frame unknown, because Shastra doesn't discuss. Is it again because we have only 5 to 10% of the Shastras known as of today, that the discussion of time frame is not known because we lost some valuable Shastras? Is that a fair assumption?
I'm not sure about that because of the 11 Upanishads that we study, it's fairly exhaustive because it covers so many areas. So I don't think that can be the case. I think some of them also talk about this, the time not known, the lokas not known, etc. It's not that they're not talking about it. We have enough references about the lokas, etc. It only doesn't say what time frame, etc. That's all. So, and some of these Puranas have these Smriti Granthas have, if you do this, you will be born as a lice, head lice, etc. You see all that gory things in the Purana because the Purana is trying to scare you into being a good citizen.
Okay. So I have one final question.
Yeah.
Clarification. So we discussed in one of the slokas about all other janmas, we exhaust karma, but only human birth, punyam and papa are acquired. So what is exhausting karma vis-a-vis acquiring punyam and papa? What is the difference? When
Yes.
you say exhaust karma.
Correct. See, as a human being, you are using your free will to influence and act. You know what is good and what is bad, and therefore you are doing things according to your free will, right? You want to study, you want to do good deeds, you want to do service, etc. But in the case of a cow or a buffalo or a tiger or a lion, you can take any of them. They do things as they are programmed as per their nature. They don't have any evil intent and, attack you or anything. So whatever is the, animal, they don't kind of plan a murder of somebody or plan to be bad to anybody. No, right? They just do what they are supposed to do. And they exhaust the karma. Why am I saying that? Some say cows are treated well. Some cows are not treated well, and some of them have a bad death. Some of them even have an accident. Why does that happen? That is because every animal janma comes with a set of prarabdha which it is exhausting. Once that is exhausted, the animal janma is over. Depending on the sanchita karma that is fructified into the prarabdha karma of the next janma, the animal can be born as a human being or a devata also.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Mala, please go ahead.
Yeah, so my question is this, madam. So we were talking about prarabdha karma, and once it is exhausted, life ends. But how are scenarios like suicide treated? I mean, how does what about the karma?
Correct. See, suicide is a free will based death causing situation. Right? So if it is a free will intentional death causing situation, for instance, there is a criminal who is running to escape, a very bad criminal, because he will have a life sentence here. He is running and then he pops the cyanide in. That is clearly a papam, right? So he has not exhausted his prarabdha karma and he has ended his life, right, by forcibly taking that. He has a special way of treatment for him. These kind of things are talked about, right? So it is definitely a free will based thing and therefore it will attract papam.
Okay. So even for youngsters, right? Some students cannot deal with the academic pressure and so on, right? You read about many young students.
Absolutely, right. That is true. All of them, if it is willful, right, and the intention, it will also vary, right? The case that I told you is very serious on life sentence, escaping and closing the life. So depending on the seriousness of the situation, the prarabdha karma will, the sanchita, it will go and add up to the sanchita.
So it will add up to sanchita karma. Okay. Thank you, madam. That means they have to bear the fruits of it when it fructifies, sometime for
there
their
is
action.
no escape, yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you, madam.
So Malini Peshwa, go ahead.
Namaste, Bhagini.
Namaste.
How about this unintentionally and unknowingly committing mistakes like ants, some smaller insects and all we kill without our knowledge. Sometimes when it hurts us also, we kill it.
Correct.
Whether they all add to our karmas.
That is called a particular type of papam. Just try and avoid. Of course, it's sometimes not possible. Even I'm not able to. Right?
Not audible, Bhagini.
Even within that, if you can, say, use a good night pray or a mat, or still better is a net, rather than using a bat to swat away. Right? So these are some of the things that we can do. But there are some to keep away insects. If we have no choice, then that should be the last choice to employ. But if we are Vedanta students and we are aware, we can try some other ways and means of avoiding them.
Okay, thank you, Bhagini.
Nagashri.
Namaskara, Mahodaya. So my question is, we take birth because of the deeds of our previous birth. So then there is one theory that we will be getting the punishments of our deeds. The jiva will be going through the punishments as told in Garuda Purana. So after those punishments also, will the jiva will be again born?
Yes. This
will
punishment written in the Garuda Purana, it's just another loka. Anyway, I talked about 14 lokas, right? So the birth can be in any loka. So you can treat it also as another birth only, from a Vedanta standpoint.
So the jiva has to go through the punishment and again of the birth.
Yeah, it depends. No, as I told you, there's so much of sanchita papa and sanchita punya. So what fructifies is determined only by the law of karma. So if the negative part is fructifying, then we have to go through those. And then once that is done, maybe take another human janma.
Okay. Then one more question, ma'am. In the natural calamities, all the prarabdhas of all the people will get exhausted at once. How is it possible? How is the timeline for all of them the same?
That is what God does. Why does He bring together 250 people, put them on a flight, and then there is a crash midair? So that's the reason. Because the prarabdha of all these people have fructified together at that time. Right? So you have to imagine God is an intelligent, principle who is doing this. Ishvara as the karma adhyakshaha. Right?
Okay. Dhanyavad. Thank you. This was a little bit confusing. The Brahman theory was so much we could understand it, but the prarabdha karma and all this is a little confusing.
Yeah, my
Not able to
suggestion
fix
is,
it.
correct. My suggestion is, please listen to this again, and that is the reason why I tried to complete as much as possible. Listen to it as much as possible once again. Next class, what I'll do is I'll finish the last portion, little more in detail I will do, and then I'll do the summary, and we will take up questions also, so that we can get all these clarified. So that is why I wanted to give you this one more week's time. So we'll have more Q&A next week also, no problem. Okay, Chandrakala, please go ahead.
Namaste, Bhagini.
Namaste.
My question is, after the prarabdha exhausts, the body will fall. What about this apamrityu and this pretatma concept?
Preta and all will anyway continue, no? Because see, after the fall of the body, then the prarabdha karma of the next body will come. And then the timeline is decided when and what janma. All that is decided as per the law of karma. Also are taken care of. Preta, etc. will come during that period that they, become a proper jiva and go and get born. That first few days journey, all of that will continue. Whatever is written in the Veda Purva Bhava.
How does, because all will not become preta. Only some people.
Absolutely. It depends on the prarabdha of the next janma. I think I mentioned this. I don't think I mentioned in this class. Chandogya Upanishad actually says that your next body is ready very much at the time of death. So the prarabdha of the next body is already ready. Then that body will get formed as a full-fledged body and take birth. And until which day it will be in preta form, etc. is also determined by the law of karma. It says it is in karma form, but it is born. Right? So that's what it says. Jambunathan Mahodaya. Go ahead.
Namaskara, Bhagini. Namaskara, Mahodaya. Hello.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay, I am audible. See, I mean, how is this free will activated? Prarabdha karma does it play any part in activating free will?
Free will, you must remember that human being, unique janma, which has been given this intellect, a superior intellect, and the intellect and the mind, right? That is basically the Sukshma Shariram is equipped with this ability to think and act. So it is part of it. It doesn't need another trigger. When the prarabdha karma has fructified and the human janma comes into account, the human janma comes with this ability to think and act independently. That is what we refer to as free will.
So nobody needs to activate it as it is. It is automatic.
Correct. It's already activated only because of the prarabdha karma you have come to this janma.
Again, my point is that in a given situation, there are many methods of acting. There are many choices of acting. The problem, when a person activates the correct method, how it is happening? That is my only doubt.
You see, you have 3 or 4 options and you are taking a decision, right? As to which option you are deciding. Sometimes you're very conscious and you decide. You're not without applying for something, saying that destiny will take its course. No, you don't do that. That's not what the Shastra is saying. The Shastra is saying use your intellect and mind to act and choose. The choice is with you.
Thanks, Bhagini. Thanks.
Okay?
Thanks.
Very nice. So, are there any other questions in this panel? What is the role in these Atma in these different types of karma? Yes, Atma is unaffected by Sthula, Sukshma, Karana, Shariram, everything. And where is all this karma? You have to go back and connect. The karma is nothing. The poorhouse of the karma, the punya and papa, is the Karana Shariram, and through the Karana Shariram, the Sukshma. You must remember that. Right? So Atma is beyond all of it. People who remain unmarried fall in which category? They are not sannyasi. They are in the Hindu system. There are only 4 possibilities, which is Brahmacharya Ashrama, Grihastha Ashrama, Vanaprastha Ashrama, and Sannyasa Ashrama. Remaining unmarried was never a choice in the Veda Purva Bhaga. There are only 4 ashramas which were accepted. You had to either take sannyasa or you had to get married. How to explain that some Christians believe in one birth only? They accept law of karma in some form, but reincarnation they reject. What could be the explanation? We don't have an explanation. We don't believe in single birth at all. So Hinduism can't answer that. We believe in multiple births. So can the blessings of God or saint help to change the prarabdha karma phala? Yeah. Now this is a blessing. How do we get blessing? Only through a ritual, right? It can be kayika, it can be manasa, it can be vachika. So you are doing something to invoke the blessings, right? So it is you who is using your free will and doing something to impact the prarabdha karma. It is perfectly okay. So if I chant Om, being a householder, will I accumulate papa or punya? There is another theory which I have spoken about elaborately in Bhagavad Gita. If the Om is chanted for Chitta Shuddhi, right, which is without any, you are not chanting Om because you want to get married, or you're not chanting Om because your child has to get admission, right, then it is called Nishkama Bhakti, and which is perfectly okay, right? But if you chant Om for getting something in the family, it's not going to work, right? So that much in a plant do have jiva in it. There's a question on, could you please clarify if a plant has a jiva in it? Very much a plant has a jiva, and it is talked in Upanishad. Oh, okay. Yes, your voice is not, it's very bad. Okay. Maybe, is it okay now?
Spectrum mark.
Okay. So anyway, we'll stop here. And how do the rituals of Shraddha and Pitrupaksha, for example, reach the departed soul when it has already taken birth? This question you must never ask in a Vedanta class, because the Pitrupaksha rituals are part of Veda Purva Bhaga. And in the Veda Purva Bhaga, it talks about some of the jivas which are still continuing as Pitru in the Pitruloka. For them, we are doing this to propitiate. That we have to continue as per our ashrama rules. In Grihastha Ashrama, we have to do all these Pitrupaksha rituals, etc. It is a rule, like the citizen has to do something, we have to do some things because we are in the Grihastha Ashrama. And it is all in the Veda Purva Bhaga. The other question is there any way to nullify the Sanchita karma? What is the perfect way to get rid of all the karma? There's no way you can nullify Sanchita. Jnanam. That's the only way. Jnanena Sanchita karma. Somebody has kept you need to know. I think we have completed everybody's. So we'll stop here, and next class I will complete this and I will complete the summary. So any of you have any questions, you can definitely be ready with the questions. You can also write in to me so that I can take care of them and I can make sure that I respond to them during the next week's class. Dhanyavadaha.